you for your presence. We are the TESOL Intercultural Communication Intersection, and this event is part of the different activities that we run throughout the year. My name is Dr. Amina Dwidi. I am the incoming co-chair with my colleague Daniela De Silva, who is present here. We're both leading the intersection this year, and one of the values that we want to continue promoting, as our colleagues before us did, is intercultural dialogue, criticality in our discipline, and broadening participations in broadening participation in a field, in our field, especially across the global south region. So today it's a space for intercultural dialogue, and it's something that we call the coffee hour. Coffee Hour is where we articulate our sense of collaboration, and we hope to that you experience it as well as a space where you cultivate critical thinking, critical reflection about our different cultures and within the field and the sphere of English language teaching. And I mentioned that we run different activities throughout the year. Some of them are webinars, the informal coffee hours. We run academic panels in the at the convention, TESOL convention every year. We have 2 lightning talks. So if you have students or if you are graduates graduating or working on a project or a research project, preferably where you'd like to test out your presentation skills and maybe practice for the Viva, or some of your students have work in progress, they can apply to the lightning talks and present their work within the limits of 5 minutes. And the atmosphere is very supportive, so they will get feedback, and also they will be encouraged to submit articles to the newsletter. Yourselves are very much welcome to submit articles, book reviews, lesson plans to our newsletter. Nicole here is the co-editor, who is also seeking help with the newsletter as well, I think, Nicole, right? Yes. Brilliant. So this is us. We are if you see us on social media or in any international conference event, please come say hi to us. And if you'd like to join us and engage with our activities, please feel free to contact us. We are on different social media platforms. Twitter has not been active much, but we're here. And today we're going to talk about today we welcome our colleague, Dr. Fatima Aldajani. Dr. Fatima, allow me to introduce you. You can see Fatima nodding her head. So she is, she specializes in curriculum and instruction with a focus on second language learning and instruction. She holds 2 master's degrees, one in theology with a focus on Quranic exegesis. I've never heard this word before. And another in educational leadership, and she serves as an assistant professor at the University of Toledo. I had a debate with myself and I later yesterday whether the University of Toledo is in the US or in Canada. I think this is something that you will need to help me settle. So today she will be going to share with us a work in progress titled Narratives of Generational Resilience, and it centers around the stories and experiences of the Palestinian people, and it is only fitting that she is welcomed here and supported in this space as a Palestinian herself, telling the stories of other Palestinians. And we have the responsibility to bear witness and stand in solidarity with you here, Fatima. So please feel free to use this space to express yourself and to share the stories that you need to share.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amina. I really appreciate your invitation for me to come and speak about this project. It's a small one, but I hope that you can benefit from it and you can help me as well with my project. Let me share my screen. Okay, let me make this bigger. Okay, is it sharing? Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to take it the whole screen. Okay, now we're good. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining me. And just to clarify a few things that Dr. Amina was asking me during her while she was introducing me. Yes, University of Toledo is in USA, specifically in the Ohio state. This is one of the major cities in Ohio. It's Dayton, Cincinnati, Columbus, and Toledo and Cleveland. So 5 main cities. Toledo is very on the borders of Michigan. So it's very close to Michigan, like 40 minutes driving away. And it has the name of Toledo from Spain. So that's where the name came from. So you're right to debate where is it, like it's located. Another thing that I would like to start with my presentation before I talk about my project is I want to give you a brief background about myself, but not from professionally or academically. Me as Fatima, my name is Fatima Aldajani. So my last name Aldajani is originally we're Palestinian from Jerusalem, and the Dajani family is one of the 5 most prominent families in Jerusalem. Our last name has another phrase, which is Dawoodi, and it refers to King David, which is our prophet in Islam. And I know in other religions, they have the same prophet, which is King David. And we were the custodian of the prophet or King David's tomb on Mount Zion for almost 1,000 years. And so the Dajani family has been the custodian of the tomb, and not only that, but also we were the guardians of the place where the Last Supper happened with Prophet Jesus with his companion. So every year, the Dajani family would gather all the people in the Jerusalem area, and people would come from all over Palestine to celebrate. So if they're celebrating Christmas, that room would be available to celebrate Christmas, and everyone will be there despite of their background. Jewish, the same thing, and Muslims are as well. So this was where my family comes from. But in 1948, my dad was displaced with his whole family. And they have been moving from one place to another until 1977. They settled up in Amman, Jordan. And that's where I was born and raised. Now, when people ask me, where are you from? Without thinking, I would respond immediately, I'm a Palestinian. I'm from Jerusalem. Although my nationality or my passport is Jordanian, I was born in Jordan. And my mom is Syrian, but still, I feel that I belong there, although I have never been there and I would never been allowed to go there. So I lived the diaspora experience from 2 different ways that I would like to share with you. The first one is when I lived in Jordan, where it's only like 1 hour, 45 minutes driving to go from Amman, Jordan to Jerusalem in Palestine. But we would never have that chance because we were not allowed. And when my dad tried that, well, during my life experience, he was refused and returned back. So they didn't let him in. And then the other experience that I had is when I moved to the United States in 2013, living my diaspora, but in a different way, where the first thing I was faced with is I need to fill out our check-a box where I am from or what's my ethnicity. And unfortunately, the options were either I'm white or African American, Latino, or Hispanic, and then Asian or not. And these are the only options. Okay, so where I am. You can see me, you talk to me, you have a conversation, you can touch me even, I can touch you, but then who you are, where I am, and when I say I'm from Palestine, even on the map, it does not exist. So I don't exist on the ethnicity list, I don't exist on the map, but I'm still here. I breathe and people can see me and talk to me. So I just felt that there is a whole like need to prove to people that I'm existing and I'm here. So after getting my master's degree and my PhD, I decided that I want to do something to make these people recognize me and believe in my existence. So I started doing storytellings and training teachers and getting my own students to tell their own stories. And from where I get this idea is I get it from when I used to go to public schools to teach or to get involved with my kids' events at school, I found that they invite people to talk about their own stories and experiences to evoke the emotions with the audience about like African American struggle and slavery in the United States, Native American, Holocaust survivors, LGBT community. So I thought, what about like I'm a Palestinian, I have been struggling and I exist, but nobody is like, actually I don't exist on paperwork. So I decided to start a story telling, whether it's through circles or changing the narrative, to raise awareness about our own struggle, resilience, and history, to change the narrative that's in textbook and in the news and the media. So that's when October 7 hit, I was really like, I want to do more, because I found out that many people are trying to know or find answers on what's going on, because there was a lot of media influence on how the narrative is so pro like Israeli, and it's supporting justifying whatever they're doing right now in Gaza. And then there is that part of social media that's telling a different narrative, where they're saying that this has been a long last history struggle and occupation for 75 years. So what I did is I had a group of team who wanted to share with me to start this project. And the reason is this project is about to document the significant event that has been going on historically in the occupied Palestine across the generations. And through collecting storytelling that capture their experiences, challenges, and resilience, despite facing this adversity, still we are fighting, and we still stand to get our right to go back to our land. And so the importance of this project has come from the idea is we want to change the narrative. And the only way to do that is to provide a comprehensive understanding of the Palestinian resilience. I want to foster empathy with Palestinians, so I need to find a way to have that empathy and evoke those emotions. I also need to build this global solidarity with Palestinian. And the most important thing is to break the silence, because there is a lot of pushback that make people not be able to speak out. I collected the story through different tools and ways and methods. So I did a lot of interviews with people, and specifically my stories are collected from Palestinians, whether in Palestine right now, West Bank, Gaza, or in the diaspora all over the world. I also ask them if they don't want to make an interview, whether in person or via Zoom, they can record their stories and share it with me. I watched documentaries, and I contacted the people who were created these documentaries to take the permission to take some of their stories. I also asked my students who I teach in West Bank and Gaza to write me letters about their own stories and experiences on a daily basis and send it to me so I can use it in my project. I also asked them if they would like to sing a song that explain their experience, and then share it with me, poems as well, and many other ways to collect these stories. Now, the way I wanted to present this changing of narrative, a lot of time we know that the most way that might make people get engaged, or they want to relate to the experience or feel empathy, is through art, different type of art. So storytelling is one of them. But then I thought about this dramatic monologue. And for those who doesn't know what does like the monologues mean, they are some kind of like a spoken words that one person would have the conversation between more than one character, and they show it to the audience with the dramatical moves. And the first, I think, monologue that happened is To Be or Not to Be from Shakespeare. So what I did is these all stories that I collected from my audience and my people in Palestine, I will collect them, and then I will write my own different monologues that could tell these stories. So people, when they hear them, they get that sense of understanding what is the real or true narrative of the Palestinian. So my monologues are going to be testimonies written by people from Palestine since the 1948 until today. And the thing is, they're going to highlight all the horror, hopes, resilience, and courageous of their fight against the occupation in Palestine. And then this is going to be really powerful because it will give them a space to provide a platform to their individual Palestinian voices to express their own experience. Also, it will allow them an in-depth exploration of the multi-layered of the Palestinian culture and identity, showcasing their resilience. It also will give them the chance through their personal narrative to highlight their struggle of displacement and the profound impact of the occupation on Palestinian on a daily life. It will embody the Palestinian voices by humanizing their experience and countering the misconceptions or misrepresentation, whether in media or a textbook or any other resources. Also, it will emotionally and on the audience, it will give them an intense of emotions that they can be evoke, and they want to have that feeling of, I want to make the change, I want to help, I want to take an action after they finish watching these monologues. And then the last thing is the language and the images that will be used through the monologue that will effectively convey that sense of loss and determination that inherent in the Palestinian experiences. And so my project is 4 phases. Right now, we're on the end of the first phase, which is collecting the stories. The next phase is we're gonna write our monologues, and I'm gonna show you how many monologues we have because we have already a framework for that. And then we're gonna spend some time practicing and training the monologues and then performing it nationally and internationally. Just to make sure that this is gonna be a frame for my monologue is the timeline of the resilience and how the Palestinian land has been shrinking since 1948 until today. And these are all the main major events that happened through the history that tells the story of the occupation and the resilience of the Palestinian. So allow me to, I muted myself, sorry. Share with you my, quickly, how many minutes do we have?
You have time.
Okay, so the first monologue is going to talk about the 1948, which is the main Nakba or catastrophe that happened where 70% of the Palestinians were forced to leave their land. And also there was a lot of massacres in certain villages. And then the second one is 1967, which is the war that happened and resulted in the occupation of West Bank and Gaza. And then the third monologue is about 1987, which is the first Intifada or rebellion. And then Oslo treaty that happened for a peace treatment where they have 2-state solutions. And then after that, we have the fourth monologue that's going to talk about the life of Palestinians in West Bank and under the Israeli occupation, or we can call it the apartheid and military rule, because even if they said that it's 2-state, the people who lived in the West Bank on a daily basis, they experience all the military brutally that they treat them, and the checkpoints and all, it's which is occurred to be an apartheid regime from the Israelis. And then we have the fifth monologue that talk about the Gaza Strip and the whole entire history that started in 2006 until today, and how the life in Gaza looks like and all the stories that talk about their experience, how it's controlled by the Israeli government, despite that they withdraw from Gaza in 2006. And finally, our sixth monologue is gonna talk about October 7 and how this is not only just began on October 7, it's just the recent chapter from the whole narrative or story of the 75 years of occupation in Palestine. And then toward the end, we want to give some spirit of hope and resilience, and that how we're going to, no matter what's going on, keep going, they're going to stand up for their rights to be able to return to their own land. So this is a whole like outline for how our six monologues are going to look like. One more thing, if we have time, I wanted to share with you one of the testimony that I found it very powerful. Do we have 3 more minutes?
Yes, we do. And just make sure that when you're sharing your sound, you share also the laptop sound.
Sure. Okay. Let me know if there is an issue with the sound when I start the video.
دينا ناصر، أنا خلقانة بالقدس وعايشة حياة الشباب تبعتي بالقدس. درست بإنجلترا ورجعت على القدس وهلأ بشتغل بالقدس. أنا بشتغل ممرضة قانونية وبشتغل كهيلث أدفايزر. هاي القطعة بتذكرني بشقفة عطتني إياها ستي، كانت دايما تهديني التطريز على عياد وعلى العرس. لما أعطتني القطعة حطيتها في بيتي أول ما تجوزنا بالقدس، وبعدين سكننا ببرزيت كم من سنة فحطيتها ببرزيت بيتنا، ورجعنا للقدس بلا القطعة وكمان بلا جوزي لأنه عشان الاحتلال الصهيوني لازم أحافظ على كياني بالقدس، لأني أنا ما بقدر أعيش بريت القدس. فممنوع نعيش مع يوسف ببرزيت، إذا بدنا نعيش معه بتروح هويتي وهوية أولادي الثلاثة، ويوسف ممنوع يجي يسكن معنا بالقدس لأنه ما معه لم شمل، كان خلقان هو ببرزيت بس هاجروا أهله فرجع كأمريكي، بس ما أعطوه لم شمل. حتى بعد الزواج 4 مرات جربنا ولسه مش معطينه لم شمل. إحنا السنة بيكون لنا 30 سنة متجوزين، وآخر 6-7 سنين كانوا أصعب 7 سنين، لأنه صرنا نشوف بعض بس بالمناسبات. حتى بالمناسبات هو ما بيقدر يجي، مناسبات الفرح والحزن، بس نحن بنزوره بالمناسبات بالويكندز. كمان نحن إذا بنقضي كتير أيامات يعني بيكون حياتنا مركز حياتنا بريت القدس. كمان الإسرائيلية بيقدروا يجوا ياخذوا هويتي إذا أثبتوا إنه مركز حياتنا بريت القدس. فبنروح زي الزوار وبنطلع زي العاملين عملة، يعني إنه خلص ما فيش كأنه إلنا كيان هناك بالمرة. هذا هو جزء من التطهير العرقي بالقدس. يعني إذا نحن قررنا نسكن مع يوسف بشحطة قلم بيشحطونا نحن الأربعة، فهي بسهولة قضوا على الأربعة. بس هذا ما بينتهي، يعني هذا عناء مستمر، لأنه الأولاد بيسافروا على الجامعات برا لازم يرجعوا يثبتوا كيانهم إنهم انعادوا على القدس. إذا هم بدرسوا برا بيعتبروهم برا، إذا قرروا يقعدوا بعد الدراسة يعتبروا إنهم طلعوا من القدس. إنه أنا تقبلت الوضع، بس دائما بحياتي بقول إن شاء الله ما عمري أندم على الحياة اللي عيشت أولادي فيها، لأنه أكيد للأولاد ما عمره كان في استقرار عائلي. يعني ياما كان في مناسبات كل واحد بجهة، ياما يعني حتى مناسبات حزن زي لما فقدت أبوي حتى نلاقوا إنه مش محرز يكون هو له تصريح يكون معنا. مناسبات لما بنتي وقعت وصفت بالمستشفى كمان هو ما كان معنا. بس نحن بالقدس بذكرونا بوجود الاحتلال كل يوم، لأنه القمع مستمر كل يوم. في مستعمرة جمنا بلزق البيت، ولما صارت الأحداث حطوا سور شيك بيننا وبينهم، الحاجز يعني كتير قريب على البيت. لما ننزل من البيت يقرروا مرات انه يسكروا الحاجز، يطلعونا كانه بنطلع على الضفه تقريبا، نلف الدوار نعود نرجع على القدس نمرق على الحاجز. فنعم الحياه بالقدس بتحسي بالاحتلال كل يوم. وزي ما قلت لك انا ما بقدرش اعيش برا القدس. انا بشتغل مستشفى المطلع، بس انزل النزله هيك اشوف القدس بوقف السياره كل يوم كل يوم. انا مروحه هيك بهدي السياره شوي بطلع على القدس هيك باخذ نفس غميق بقول عشان هيك انا هون يعني.
So this is one of the stories. I found it in one of the documentaries that I watched. That's really telling about this is an ongoing struggle. It didn't start in October 7. And that's only the last chapter, or the recent chapter. It's not the last chapter, because I hope the last chapter would be us going back to our land. Thank you so much for being with me and listening to my small project that I'm working on. Please feel free to ask any questions, share thoughts or ideas. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Fatima, for your generosity and also for trusting us with your stories and the stories of your people. I said inshallah in my heart, which means God willing, when you said about your wish for the last chapter, and I think all of us were saying it in different languages. I'm just gonna quickly start because I have the privilege of co-chairing and just asking the question. You said we when you talked about the project. I would like to know who is the we, and also you said that you would be using these documentaries that you shared with us as part of the monologue recreation. Therefore, do you have permission to that? How does it work? Are you in contact with the people who were interviewed in these third parties documentaries? Thank you.
So for your first question, it's a very small team, me and another history teacher here that live in Toledo. We have been working together for a long time as teachers. So when I brought the idea, he has a background in theater because that's his bachelor degree. And we were brainstorming ideas how we can change the narrative using different type of arts. So that's where it came to the monologue idea. Because he does a lot of theater with his students to teach them history. So we found that monologue is really something that's right now it's like something that people likes to watch. They go to. There is more than one event that was happening in Toledo, again for different purposes, and they've been using monologue. So I think it's something that would attract the audience to come and watch, whether they're from the older generation or the younger generation. So that was the idea. So me and the other, and his name is Yusuf Badar. So just to give you the name. The other question is, yes, and I contact the director of this documentary, which is Palestinian Stitches. That's the name of the directory. And actually we had an event at University of Toledo showcasing screening the whole film, the documentary, to our on campus to our audience. And I asked, of course, for the permission to use some of the stories in my monologue, and she gave me that permission. But definitely that's the most important thing, to get the permission even from the people I interviewed. They signed a consent form that they're okay to share their stories. Now, some of them, they didn't want their face to be shown when it's a recorded video. So we're making sure that either we're only taking their voice, or if we're having a video, that's it doesn't show their face.
But if I have understood, I have a question. You are then rewriting, the story in a dramatic monologue, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Okay. And so what your aim is, for example, then to unit the video with the dramatic monologue, or just, for example, to let the dramatic monologues be shared, okay, kind of around. You want
doing
to use the picture and the word, or?
Yeah, so we're doing both. So in the back, there would be like a screen that shows the picture. And if it's a video, it's going to be muted. And the person who is saying the monologue is the one who's talking. But the picture is back there and it shows the person talking, but it's muted. Or if we have like a screenshot or a picture that they send us, or even their letter, if they wrote a letter, that's what would be seen on the background.
Thank you.
Patricia has a question. Feel free to unmute, Patricia, if you wish, or I can read it for you.
Thank you. I have unmuted. Can I please ask the question?
Sure.
Thanks, Fatma. Your story is really intriguing, but I would like to know your target audience, please.
So our target audience for now is our people in the United States or the Western countries in general. But that was my target audience, is what can I do to change the narrative here in the United States, specifically in my area, Toledo or Ohio? Because my goal at the end, I want to be able to travel with my monologue nationally and internationally to perform this monologue to people. So that's the vision, the big goal. But right now, I want to see how can I change my own community to give them the right narrative, to be able to the chance to hear what is the right narrative and what has been going on. Because every day the question that we would be asked, what about what Hamas did in October 7? And then always my answer would be, what about the 75 years before even Hamas existed? So that's how, but sometimes when you give the answer like directly, it's really like offensive to some people, and they would think that you don't care about the people who are been killed in Israel, or you don't care about killing other people. And I would say, no, that's not what I meant. It's more deeper, but it's not complicated, because that's their answer. It's so complicated, some people would say. It's not complicated. It's just like there is a lot of information that you don't know or you have missed.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Can I take my turn? Dr. Fatima, this is a very fascinating and also inspirational project. And I have a question and then I have a comment. So my question first is just to understand more about your context. Are you teaching in a university?
So right now I teach at the university level. I have been teaching at the university for the last 2 years. Before that, I was a teacher in public school from K to 12. And I spent like 5 to 6 years teaching in middle and high school. I worked with second language learners, specifically refugees, in high school. And that's where I was exposed to the amount of information that they teach them in the social study classroom about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that's what they call it, and how there is a lot of, but not only about Palestine, there is a lot of misinformation about African American, Native American, even the, so that was so shocking for me, how much they use the information to twist it to match their Western or European perspective, to show always that this is not their fault, with all the struggle that happened with any people that are as a minority. And this is one thing. And then the other thing is me working at the worst, I think would say, districts in the area where people are hesitant to go work there because they don't like to work there because of the type of students, because from very low socioeconomic, and most of them are, like you can say, 80% are African American or Latino. So people are always like running away from teaching these kids because they said they had a lot of like behavioral issue, or we can't deal with them. It's a different culture. Because the majority here in the United States is 98% of teachers are white. So there is a lot of like big gap between their two cultures. That's where I started to learn a lot about this, and I wanted to do something to be the voice of these kids, whether they're refugees, Palestinian, African American, and any background that they are considered as minorities or marginalized students.
So I understand that you're teaching in a second language education class. Okay, so I think I have. So just to say, I've been asked to do a book review. So I'm reading this book right now, which is on translanguaging. I don't know if you can see it. Try to make it
It's
clear.
blurry. It's blurry.
Okay, in any case, it says translanguaging and epistemological decentering and higher education research. And there was a chapter here which I thought was really interesting because it was a parallel to an approach you're taking, and I thought it's important that I share it. So in this it's it's like four language educators, researchers, different languages, okay, Italian, Hebrew, Chinese, and I forget another language, but it's about teaching the conflicts, and it's saying that teaching these conflicts is it's a big no-no. It's a big taboo in the United States. And that they had an approach using film or drama to affect a kind of emotional and like empathizing through emotion, right? And there's this one lady, and she's just amazing. And I think you should really just know about what she did, because it's kind of parallel, except for that she's getting the students to write the scripts.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
I'll just put it in the chat so that
yes,
you can
please.
catch
I
it.
would
It's
love-
page. It's really inspiring, and I always look for really inspirational ways that we teach people. We don't shame them what they feel or where they're at. We work with where they are at, but we kind of mobilize them through some kind of authentic experience or participation. And I see you're doing that, and I feel that you could you could write it. I'm trying to get it to be clearer so you could see it. So you
I
could,
don't know why it's getting blurry.
I don't know
It
why
just
it's
only
getting blurry.
Yeah.
Okay, it's
You
just
can
not
type
working
the
on my
name of
camera. I
the
think
book.
I got the screensaver on it.
Oh, now it's working. Yes. Okay.
So it's
Now
just
it's
new
working.
and off the I'm just writing the book review for it. I'll put the
Mhm.
information in the chat, but the part that I really like is that she had the students write a narrative mode as writers. Then she had them tell the story as storytellers. Then she had them adapt the story for the stage as playwrights. And then she had them edit each other's work as editors. And then she had them to cast students to be in their monologues as directors. Then she had them perform the parts that were given to them as actors. And then reflect on the group of students' performance as critics. So in this way, they went through this whole thing of writing a story, performing the story, empathizing with someone else's story, maybe not their own story. And I
Yeah.
feel like, wow, this is really what we should be doing in intercultural education. So I'm going to put this in the chat so you can look at it, hopefully get access to this book.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Milena, because I think this is very similar to one of the story narrative that we use in our workshops, where you put people in groups and then you put each group into pairs and they have to tell their own story to their partner. And then when they get into the bigger group, they have to say the other person's story as if it's their own story. So like in the first person, and then that's how, like you said, it's really like it's the empathy, the the feelings that they have. A lot of people I have seen that they started like crying or being so emotional, just imagining as if this is their own story and it's happening to them. And how it changed the perspective and having the dialogue and being able to put your shoes in someone else's shoes just to listen to them and what they have been going through. So this empathy, yeah, that's true. It is the key to make people feel that. But thank you so much for sharing this. There is also one more thing that I would like to, maybe this will be helpful for any teacher. There is a whole project called Teaching Palestine. And it has a whole curriculum from first grade until 12th grade. You can use it also with your college students. Teaching Palestine is a whole website, full curriculum for a teacher named Samia Shuman. And she created very similar activities to the one you're talking about in your book that you're doing the review, where students has to do the work and get to the conclusion. In her framework, she used only giving facts to her students, and they are the one who should reach out to a conclusion. Because she said, when what you say it's a truth, it's based on your own perspective. But when you have facts, that's the difference between truth and fact. Fact, there is no like two opinion about a fact. But with truth, based on your perspective, you can define what you think is true, that is truth. So she always give them facts and let them get to the conclusion when she teach them about Palestine. And the whole curriculum is out there and it's free for everyone to use. So that's a good resource.
And I'm just going to add one last thing, because you spoke about empathy as being putting yourself in someone else's shoes. So just to add to that and enrich that a little, there's a quote here that this author cites, is that empathy is the ability not only to put yourself into someone else's place, but to put yourself in someone else's problem.
Yeah, okay, I think. Well, thank you so much. These are good and valuable feedback.
I'd like to add something if I may, and I see Nicole also. Nicole, shall I go first? Okay, so when I heard about your talk, it reminded me of something I read many years ago, and I'm sure that many of you know about intergenerational trauma and how that goes from, you know, can be passed down from one generation to the next. And I've just read about it in books. I'm putting a small little piece in here into the chat. And this was just a real quick search on the internet. So it's not official. It's not coming from an article or anything like that. But what I remember reading about 15 years ago when I went to study the troubles in Ireland between, you know, England and Ireland, and that, you know, more of a religious and I guess governmental philosophy basis, but it talked about how that trauma is actually gets into the DNA of people and is passed down for 7 generations. And so since then, I keep reading this. I've heard 5 generations. I've heard 7 generations. So I keep running across this, and I thought it was really relevant to your topic, Fatima, because if we don't interrupt the trauma, and if we don't talk about it and uncover why the trauma is there within a people, then, you know, I'm afraid that we just keep passing this down. And, you know, and even generations who don't understand where it may come from, if this is true about this intergenerational trauma, then it's something to be alarmed about, and how, you know, not only are we trying to solve the problems, but we're always also trying to solve the problems currently, but also for future generations.
Actually, thank you so much, Leslie, for bringing this up. And just to let you know, this is totally 100% true, and it has been proven through scientific research. Actually, my oldest sister, she's a microbiologist, full professor. All her lab works are on proving how the generation trauma go through generation. She did a lot of research about the Syrian refugees in Jordan, and they found that in the next few generations, because in Syria, this is not the first war that happened to them, on how they were been treated from their dictatorship government. The dad of Bashar al-Assad did the same thing. So you're talking about 2 generations or 3 generations that happened to them the same trauma. Like my mom from Syria, she has been through that. So her family also through that. They have 3 generations who the parents were either assassinated or killed or arrested. And then after their kids now, they're 30 and 40 years old, the same thing happened to them. So it's an ongoing also generational trauma. Now, one of the things that I had in one of my storytelling is that also it's proven storytelling is a healing process for the generational trauma, because the only way they can keep this ongoing to make through generation that they keep fighting for their right to go back is they tell the stories. So telling the story is also proven by research and scientists that it's a way to heal from this trauma, because with generational trauma, the trauma is not ended yet. It's still going on, and it won't end. And actually, you won't call it a trauma, as they said, until it's done. Because in order to call something a trauma, it has to have a beginning point and an end point. And that's when it's a trauma. But this is an ongoing, so they're still living the trauma. They're still inside the trauma. It's not ended. So it's not done yet. And it's still going. And it goes through the genes. And this has been proven. My sister's name is Rana Dajani. If you want to read some of her research and article about the Syrian refugees, I think it's she had a lot of amazing research that she has done. This is her name, Rana Dajani.
Mhm. Can I comment, for example, I have had parents that went through the Second World War. And of course, isn't it, there was a lot of storytelling about, how they survived and who survived and, what happened after, et cetera, et cetera. And I also thought that this was memory, that was shared to me, and that this memory kind of built into my identity. So I think it is also somehow profound, that your identity is multi-layered, has the past, okay, also of your own parents. And I think that, storytelling builds also this, builds identity, okay, and people find voice and words, for what they have experienced. I knew what war was without somehow having, thanks God, without having experienced it, but I knew, from the very early age what war was, okay, because through, the things that I've been told, by my parents, okay, that's why, we also longed for peace, okay, though it was obvious we had it somehow. I just wanted to connect storytelling to memory building and to identity, which is quite obvious.
Yeah. Oh, yes, it is. It is quite obvious. And this is how I think our identity. Like when I think about my own identity and my kids who were born and raised here in the United States, how can you keep that identity in? Because there is a whole different layer of interculture when you have like the Western culture and your Middle Eastern culture, and then all of this like in one identity it has to be. So how you avoid them from this identity crisis, who we are, where do we belong, which part is our culture. So that's that is true. Thank you so much for bringing that up. It's the identity piece, yes, of who we are.
I'm just going to jump on Barbara's comment, just to connect a little bit to your story and connect it also to the idea of intergenerational trauma, and also just to suggest maybe what good looks like for people that have gone through it. So in my experience, my father was in Holland under the Nazi German time, when the Germans were in Holland, and then my mother was in the internment camps in Indonesia under the Japanese after the Dutch had left. So there's these two different experiences of the East and the West in which we see some similar patterns. So I know that the Dutch government would give therapy for the first generation, so my mom's generation, and they would, if I was in Holland, I would also get therapy as a second generation person living under parents of that. And I think in some way it's progressive because it allows what you had said, Barbara, which is that, and also Fatima, maybe for your children, also to just to say that it lives through, something passes on that needs to be reconciled. I don't know who pays for that in Canada or the United States.
Well, I wish that I like the idea because I never heard about it, that but I like the idea because with the new generation or the younger generation, other than like just telling the story, is a way of healing the trauma through the generation, is to have these like therapy sessions. Even if they're not like in Palestine or they're experiencing any of the like a struggle, just only like I can feel that with my own children, like on a daily basis. Since October 7, I have been like, my life is not anyway like before. I'm so like on the news and I want to know what's going on. I have a lot of family members, a lot of friends there. I lost a lot of family member. I lost a lot of friends. So this is really affecting, and they would tell me, why, like, you have been changed, mama. You're not anymore like when you were before. And I think this is something that any human would not be able to live their normal life anymore when they hear the news on a daily basis, how much the death toll is like increasing. So I think but there is one more thing that I would like to touch base on. A lot of time when people talk about the Palestinian resilience and all of the struggle that we have been through, there is something, because this is where here I found in the United States, because like you said, it's a no and we can't talk about it. And you're even like, you have the right to speak against the United States government, but if you spoke against the Israeli government, you might get like arrested or charged with criminal anything. So what I would like to say is, a lot of time we also, the whole narrative that has been evoked every day here in the West, that it's Jewish and anti-Semitism. What I have learned a lot is Jewish people, there is some Jewish people who has been discriminated, treated unfairly under the Israeli government. I know a lot of Jewish friends who are the Arab, and what happened to them in 1948. And I think this is also can be included in the stories, or maybe even like a different way of monologue or stories, just to show how it's not like a Jewish Palestinian or Arab fight. It's more about a political ideology that wants to control people and divide people and have power and control of other people. Because this is something has been never brought up. What's the experience of the Jewish Arab and what happened to them? What happened to the kids who were kidnapped in 1948 and no one knows where they have been? What happened to the Jewish from Yemen? How did the Jewish from Ethiopia right now living in Israel, how they are treated? They're a second-class citizens. They don't have the same rights of the other Israeli who came from Europe or the United States. So all of these that never has been brought up on the news or ever anyone talked about. It's a whole, so that's why I keep saying it's an apartheid, not only on the Palestinian, but also for the Jewish who are considered as second class. It's against humanity. That's what I can say. It's not about like only Palestinian or certain people. So
thank you, Fatima. I'm gonna ask maybe if Roxana still wants to contribute. I saw, Roxana, that your hand was up.
Yeah, well, thank you, Amina. Thank you, Fatima, for sharing your story and stories. I'm Ukrainian, and I can relate really well to this. And actually, my heart started pounding when we started talking about generational trauma. Russia's war against Ukraine, oppression, this is not something new. This has been going for centuries. Great-grandparents, grandparents and parents suffered so much through this, and it has been going on. So for the past 10 years, and especially for the past 2 years and almost a half, every morning starts with reading the news, and every evening before I fall asleep, I read the news. What is happening in Ukraine, where my family lives, where my mother lives, where my sister lives, where my niece lives. It's generations of people, generations that go through this every day. Every day civilians are killed. My father was an engineer. Russia has destroyed a lot of infrastructure, lots of electric power plants. Recently, I was reading about those that were destroyed that my father built, where my father spent years as an engineer building them. I woke up in the morning, I was crying. It was very hard to put myself together to go and teach, be in the classroom. So I'm just sharing this because sometimes people don't realize. They may look at me and see me as being white, think that I have privilege. Maybe there is a box for me to check, but unfortunately, there has been a lot that people don't see, or there is a lot, right? So, and I really like how you talk about sharing stories and going to schools and classrooms, because I think that's important. Also, as an educator, teacher educator, also as a parent, I've done this as well. Sometimes I have to say that people don't want to listen to these stories because there are other narratives that dominate. So, but it's still important work to do. And I'm not exactly sure that all of the therapy sessions can help. I think what is most important is understanding of colleagues, understanding of people that you work with. And I think it's important that we have sessions like this, because intercultural communication, intersection, and all the colleagues that are here and some that are not, I think they have been very supportive, very understanding, and having this space, opportunity to share that, I think is also very important. So I think as educators, we have to think about how to make spaces and where to find places to share these stories more. And what are some of the good ways to engage people with the stories? Because I think sharing is just one way. It's like broadcasting almost, right? Like radio, you can listen. So when we do school visits, when we have community opportunities, so how can we really engage? And I think Melanie shared, that's wonderful how it's done, that chapter, right? How educators use that in the classroom, that students, not only they work on writing stories, but there is that full circle. So these are great opportunities, I think, that we have to think about and be more proactive how to do that. So thanks
Thank
for
you.
the opportunity to share kind of, my
Thank
perspective.
you for sharing your own story and experience. It's really important to share that, because there is always some ground that we can relate to as humans. Like everyone has their own maybe story or history from their parents.
Thank you, Roxana. Fatima. Patricia is raising her hand. Patricia, please just unmute and contribute.
Thanks, everyone. I think I want to echo Roxana's words and just thank you for sharing that experience. And I think, as Roxana has just said, all of us have that traumatic history, maybe from our grandparents, our parents, and what we've heard them say. I personally come from Kenya. There are a lot of stories from the colonial period. And in my undergraduate, I took English language and literature. And some of the literature we read in campus, it was just traumatizing, I should say, like what happened during the colonial periods, what our grandparents went through, our great-grandparents. And there was a book I read, I can't remember the writer, but it was called 2000 Seasons. And when I read that book, I was young then, but I started to develop something like resentment within me. And I was asking myself, like, why would, like how the slaves from Africa were being treated in the ocean and how they would just be chained up together and thrown in the sea. And I started building some resentment because of that. And I was wondering, asking myself, why did I have to read that? At this age, no one had told me, but from that book and a lot of literature books I read were very traumatic. And I think that connects to the intergenerational trauma. Some kids have never got to be given this story. Thanks, Dr. Amina, for sharing that book. I think we can look for it. It explained what happened, and it was very, and understand what everyone is saying. And when you do not have the right information, you can find yourself developing some kind of resentment. But with time, I learned that a lot of human beings have gone through pain, have gone through this kind of trauma. And I think one of the topics that has been going around recently, especially I think is in TESOL, is about, that trauma-informed teaching. Do our children know this? Do the kids we teach in school know these stories? But I came to my own conclusion that with all the pain we've had to go through, maybe from the stories we hear, which could be carried on to generations, I taught myself just to, as a way of therapy, sharing the story is one way, writing a book about it is another way, and even viewing people as people, because when we read history, being Black was like, it was like a sin to be Black, But I came to realize that being Black is just a color, we're just human. But when you read those stories, it was like when you're Black, it's like you're not human. I read another quote by a lady who had written a book that these are very sad one, that the African has no soul, and that the African has a very small brain. That was a quote I read from a literature book those years, very many years back. So that thing had been haunting me. How come the African has no soul? I mean, anything that has life has a soul. Well, those were people who behaved in that way, but as someone said, we still have to live together as humans. We have to learn to forget some things. I don't know whether to forget or get over it in a way and just move on with life, because these things happened, maybe out of ignorance or something, but life has to go on all the same. And I think sharing these stories sometimes is therapeutic in a way. Like you learn to get over it when I listened to what Fatma was just sharing, and some chills were going through me when that lady was talking, like, does a human being deserve that kind of life? When she was talking about the relative they can't see, and that lady was sharing the nurse, and I was feeling some chills in me, and it was, so I think it's great. It's a great opportunity, and I'm glad to have found myself in this forum where, we can openly share and maybe also get to hear what other people have gone through, get to hear stories from other people, stories I didn't know. Actually, today I've learned a lot about Palestine. There are things I didn't know. We just watch the news, which we believe sometimes could be cut and censored, but this is the raw data we are getting from each one of us. Thank you very much.
Very gracious and generous, Patricia. Thank you so much. We hope we can still have you with us in other of our activities. This is where the moderating me comes in. And thanks our guest of honor today, Dr. Fatima Aldajani. It has been an absolute pleasure listening to you. And you can see the colleagues nodding and
Thank you so much.
and clapping as well. So please feel free to contact Dr. Fatima Aldajani if you have any opportunities in your schools and universities, and if you want to take this conversation further into your classrooms. I'm sure she will be a great guide. Do keep following us. We have more activities coming up. The next talk will be a webinar on decoloniality with Sarah Hopkins, Dr. Sarah Hopkins, who will talk about decoloniality in the context of English as a medium of instruction. And we have more surprises for you for this academic year. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for your empathetic ears and for your contributions and generosity, and I hope to see you very soon again.